Hello everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to be playing a little bit of Diablo 4 Season 4 while talking about the state of the game currently and if it is worth playing for casual players such as myself. While this is all happening, I will have some helltide gameplay in the back of a Thorns Barbarian. If you are interested in seeing a build for Thorns Barbarian, I'm currently working on it, busy leveling up and gathering gear, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it coming in the future. Let's begin by talking about the meat and potatoes of the season, which is leveling, helltides, and iron wolves, which is the seasonal theme. Right off the bat, leveling has become a lot easier in comparison to the last seasons. This is due to a couple of things. Firstly, World Tier 3 and 4 have had their XP multipliers increased, meaning once you get into 3, you're pretty much zooming the rest of the way to 100. And secondly, this is because of the redesign to helltides and them now appearing in World Tier 1 and 2. Helltides, as you can see from the gameplay, have been kind of reworked in a way that they have become super juiced. There's tons of mobs everywhere, there's a new threat mechanic that basically lets you build up threat, and as you do, more mobs will ambush you throughout the way. And during this time, you're running around with a ton of people around you, slaying at these events, as well as these new mini events where you can summon basically the seasonal theme boss and get a ton of loot and XP from this. Now there's a lot of nitty gritty behind the math. Going into leveling up quicker this season, but to cut it short and sweet, you're going to spend less time in levels 1 to 50 than ever before, as you're just going to soar through World Tier 1 and 2, although I do recommend only playing on World Tier 2, but you're going to soar through them straight into World Tier 3 pretty quickly. Now for the seasonal theme, which is all based around the Iron Wolves. Spoilers ahead, the seasonal story is pretty meh. It is extremely short, you're going to finish it really quickly, but I think this season is less about the story and more about everything that has been brought into the game. So from a perspective of leveling 1 to 50, the experience was extremely enjoyable, especially as someone who doesn't have a lot of time to put into the game. Being able to just beat those boring levels as quickly as possible is actually pretty good in my opinion. But it's not just about the amount of time spent, I also just have to compliment them on how well they have done helltides. They are just full of enemies, there's constant action, you never know when things are going to pop up. You even have very little time to yourself to even TP back to town, that's how crazy these things are now. On to the next thing, which kinda ties into helltides. While you're running around, you're not going to get as many items as before. Item drops have been significantly reduced, and they have been modified themselves to have less stats on them, but these stats that you do have on the items are now more impactful. For example, you won't get something like 20% damage to crowd controlled enemies, instead you're going to get something like 100%, but obviously these stats appear less often across all your gear pieces. On top of this, a lot of the meaningless stats have been done away with, and I know everyone always makes the joke, damage on a Tuesday while it's sunny, those things have been done away with completely. Now you're just getting more generic things that are more applicable over a wider range of things. And while we're talking about itemization, we can't forget to talk about the tempering, which in my opinion has been the most amazing addition to the game that they could have brought in this season. Tempering is a way to add stats to your gear. But not just meaningless stats that are boring and can sometimes apply. These stats are really awesome and can actually create new builds entirely, such as the bash aspect, or not aspect rather, the bash tempering that lets bash hit in a cleave in front of you instead of just one enemy, and it does increase damage. This is a fantastic start from Blizzard to create more build diversity, and we're going to get to build diversity later, but just these tempering stats alone open up amazing ways to play the game. So now during this season, you're running around helltide, leveling up, having an absolute blast, jumping from 1 to 50 as quick as you possibly can, and while you're doing it, you're getting these awesome meaningful increases to your build and your character through these nice items, as well as tempering, which I cannot understate is really impactful for your overall power. And I suppose this leads to the next point which I wanted to talk about, which is build diversity. I think this is as diverse as Diablo has ever been. I mean, there's a ton of powerful things. Obviously, this season Necromancer is absolutely busted, but every single class has amazing and powerful builds that they can use. Now, obviously, a lot of these, you're going to have to get to the end game to take full advantage of them, but many of these builds can be played right off the bat or just a little bit into your leveling experience. Talking more about the leveling experience, one thing I did not like in the previous seasons is the way that you had to target farm certain things to get certain materials to go do more certain activities. It felt a bit repetitive and also pigeonholed. One thing they've done this season is basically make it so that these rare materials, for example the materials needed to summon Varshan, can drop from basically anywhere, and you're just going to get them passively while you're playing the game, which feels amazing. You're going to go out into helltides, spend an hour, maybe two, playing with your friends, having an absolute ton of fun, and then when you come back you're going to be surprised just as to how many of these materials you actually got. But let's talk about the few negatives that I have and then close out with some final thoughts. Firstly, like I said before, the seasonal theme is pretty meh. You don't really interact much with the Iron Wolves. You do a very short quest. I mean, we did it in just an hour or two, I think. And then on top of that, there's nothing more. After that, you finish the story and it's done. Now, I don't know if they have plans to maybe add some small live service events later on for the season. But overall, the story quest was very, very meh. And for my last negative, it's gold. You just never have enough gold. Now, this might have not been the case in previous seasons where we were swimming in hundreds of millions, but now you are going to be clinging onto life to make sure that you have enough gold for all these things. Everything is extremely expensive, the tempering and the masterworking from what I've seen, as well as the reducing and upgrading materials, even the gems. You're going to need an absolute ton of money to upgrade your gems. So always save, always sell things you don't need at the vendors instead of dismantling them unless you're in a pinch for materials. But as for the closing thoughts on this, I'm going to be honest with you. If you enjoy Diablo, you like the gameplay, you like the way it feels, you like the theme of it, you will love the season. It feels very fresh. Everything they've done has been pretty good. Myself, I took 2 months off the game because the last season was really, really not that great. But when I came back, I feel invigorated to play the game. I literally can't stop thinking about it while I'm at work. I'm thinking of different builds that I want to put together. It is extremely fun, and I think they've done a fantastic job with the season. And because of that, I don't fault them too much about the seasonal theme being pretty meh, because I'm just enjoying the game so much that I don't really care. So should you want to play the game in Season 4 as a casual player who doesn't have too much time to commit, I would say yes. You're going to get a lot of value out of it. The leveling experience is shorter, so you don't have to spend a ton of time grinding, doing mindless things. And now you can get to the more meaty part of the game, which is going to be the end-game pit system, as well as doing the higher nightmare dungeons and killing the new Uber bosses that have arrived. And that's not even something I mentioned, but there are new Uber bosses, which some of you might not want to tackle, some of you might want to look forward to tackling them. But there is a ton to do once you reach that end-game system. But that's all the thoughts I have on the subject. If you guys enjoy and have any thoughts, please share them down below. If you did enjoy, please consider liking and subscribing as well. And until next time, farewell.